Clients of a law firm that collapsed 5 years ago have been telling you and yours about the thousands of pounds in legal bills that they face. They believe they were missold so-called family protection trusts. McClure Solicitors left thousands of its clients in difficulties when it went bust in 2021. Clients claimed they were sold trusts by the company on the basis that the trust would protect their homes from being sold to pay care home fees. When a home is placed in a trust, the trustees take ownership of it. In cases where McClure Solicitors are named as trustees on a client's home, the client no longer owns the property and cannot sell it, something some clients claim was never explained to them. The former director of McClure, Andrew Robertson, said the company arranged well over 20,000 of these trusts, and he's previously denied that any clients were misled into paying for them. We can hear now from two people caught up in this. Philip Gilbert from Cornwall says he was advised to set up a trust by McClure when he and his wife went to make a will. Susan Williamson from Devon was sold her McClure's Family Protection Trust by a third party, a funeral plan provider called Golden Charter. It was promoting the trust at a teachers' conference she attended.
I wasn't particularly thinking about getting older. I was thinking about a new life. I was 61 then. I was working pretty much full time, and I was just thinking about changing my direction in life. I'd done 14 years of teaching, so I went along to this conference to see what it was about, what they were offering. And looking back, retiring teachers at that point were due a lump sum of money. It was sold to us as a means of avoiding probate when we die and avoiding sideways inheritance with regarding our two children. And it was sold on care costs, which at that time wasn't something that had entered our minds. It cost just under £4,000.
We really wanted to write our wills, so we visited McClure's office in Truro to do that. And then we were encouraged by the person we saw to set up a family trust. He assured us it would be a good way of assuring that our finances would be secure, that if anything should happen to us in the future, then the house would not need to be sold for any care fees or anything like that. It was quite expensive. It cost about £4,000 to set up. And this was in 2018. I was 57 at the time, my wife was 50. It's not something we went there to do. It was a very convincing argument. We talked about it and we decided to go ahead and do that.
Well, the initial thing that I discovered was that it had been handed over to Jones White Solicitors. So I contacted Jones White to find out what was going on. And they said, well, we need to review your two trusts and then we can decide what to advise you to do next. They were charging £500 per trust. That is with VAT, of course. So it was just under £1,000.
We received a letter, I think it was about 2 years ago, from a company called Jones White, telling us that McClure's had gone into administration and they needed to review what had been done. And there was a cost of, I think it was about £750, which we felt was an inordinate amount of money on top of what we'd already paid. And at that point, we started to get rather concerned and started to look into the whole situation, at which point we found that there were several other people that had had issues about this. In fact, after 10 years, we would have to start paying tax on the value of the home. That, in fact, the whole point of the trust to secure the home for the benefit of children actually is negligible, that the local authority may ignore that. All sorts of things that we didn't really realise at the time and then bitterly regretted going down the road that we did.
It was quite a bit later, really, that the penny dropped and we realised that we couldn't do anything with our property without the say-so of the two trustees that were on our title deeds. That was when we really realised that we hadn't got 100% ownership of our property. Oh, it was awful. It was dreadful. I can't explain emotionally how I reacted. It was a knee-jerk, what do we do now? So that was the next stage in the proceedings, to get those two solicitors off our title deeds and get the ownership of the trust back into the family names.
So the situation at the moment is that we're using a solicitor. She's going to go through the details and get us out of this trust. However, that's going to be a cost of another just over £4,000. So in total, this whole adventure has cost us over £8,000 to get to this stage. Very angry about the fact that I feel we were misinformed. It's something, as I say, we've worked hard all of our lives. We've saved hard. And just to have £8,000 wasted, it is an inordinate amount of money for something which really has become worthless.
Naive in hindsight. We just trusted people. It's exhausting. I just hope that more and more people become aware of this before too long. We're fortunate. We're alive to deal with this, and it's not something that we've left our children. And at 74 years old, we're just hoping to clear that deck now and make it simple when we do leave the planet, so that our children don't have anything untoward to deal with.
Susan Williamson and Philip Gilbert. Well, Golden Charter has denied mis-selling the Family Protection Trust to Susan. The company told us their documents did not claim that a trust would protect against care costs. They say that their records from the time and a telephone call with Mrs Williamson in October 2024, recorded with her consent, show she had no difficulty in understanding the concept of the trust and was very well informed. Jade Garney is chair of the Association of Lifetime Lawyers, and it's written a report about the hidden dangers behind family protection trusts. The report is called Trust or Trap. Jade Garney, welcome to you and yours. Tell us then, why did you decide to write this report?
Hi, yes, we decided to write it because this is an area of growing concern for us, and many of our members had reported that they've been having to navigate helping clients who have fallen prey to these types of trusts with other providers.
Who typically have these trusts been sold to?
Generally, we're seeing that whilst they can be sold to anyone, those who are sort of getting older in life tend to be a key target. They might be looking at planning for their retirement. Things like care fees might be a real consideration for them in the near future, as well as, the possibility of having to pay inheritance tax. And so we find that older individuals are a key target for these types of predatory practices.
You call them predatory practices, and I should perhaps just reiterate the Golden Charter, who have been mentioned, deny having missold these to people. But what can the consequences of setting up one of these trusts be for you? We heard from Susan that the house no longer belongs to her, it belongs to the trustees. She can't sell it. Anything else?
Yeah, that's right. And whilst asset protection trusts can serve legitimate purposes in some cases, unfortunately, an increasing number of people are being missold the schemes. And adding insult to injury, on top of not being in control and owning the property in your name anymore, it's often the case that consumers are persuaded to take these out for tax planning purposes or to avoid care fees. And unfortunately, they just don't achieve those objectives. There could be adverse lifetime tax consequences, and local authorities can still include the value of the property in any care fee funding assessment.
So whatever your motivation for taking them out, they will not protect you from care home fees. How could they mean that you would pay extra tax?
Because when you create a lifetime trust, they actually have their own tax treatment. It is quite complicated, but in essence, there could be an entry charge when you settle a property into that trust if it exceeds the allowances that are available. So this means that you might be paying a 20% tax charge just settling the asset into the trust, which a lot of people are not made aware of. I have a client at the moment where this has happened, and because the value of their property exceeds the trust allowances, they're looking at paying an entry charge of about £40,000.
Is there any way you can undo it? I mean, if you've done it and you feel you were missold and you didn't really understand, is there any way it can be put right?
It's possible to take it to court and get a court order to unwind it and essentially forgive the tax charges. However, that's judged on a case-by-case basis, and taking that court action can be extremely lengthy and costly.
What would your advice be then to anyone who's considering taking out one of these trusts? Who are they suitable for? What should you look out for?
As I said, they can be suitable, and they're suitable for people where they may have a considerable tax liability and they're looking to plan intergenerationally, but down from children, grandchildren, and so on. The key thing is to look out for red flags when people start discussing trusts with you. So one key red flag will be that if they promise you the world, then it's probably not quite true. So if they're saying you won't pay any care home fees, you won't pay any inheritance tax, then that's a bit of a red flag. If they're encouraging you not to discuss these plans with family members or not to take a second opinion, that's another key red flag as well. And if they're talking about transferring ownership of your home out of your names, then that is another red flag.
Jade Garney, thanks so much for that. The Legal Ombudsman is dealing with complaints about McClure clients in England and Wales, and the Scottish Legal Complaints Commission is dealing with complaints in Scotland. When solicitors go bust, the regulator appoints another company to take on their files. And in this case, as we heard from Susan and Philip, that company is called Jones White, WHYTE. But Jones White tell us that any concerns should be directed to the McClure Solicitors insurance providers. And here is their email address, masterpolicyclaims@uk.lockton.com. So that's masterpolicyclaims, all one word, at uk.lockton.com. You're listening to You and Yours, Radio 4's consumer programme. It's 16 minutes past 12 now. People have always done batch cooking, where